Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad to have you here today in my Friday forum. It also happens to be a very special holiday for many people. It's Good Friday, it's Passover, it's Ramadan. And I just want to say welcome and hope you're enjoying the holiday in a very special way with family and friends. I'm very excited to have with me some special guests, and we're going to have a very interesting conversation. As you're coming into the workshop today, the forum, please put your name and your location. And also, if you've ever been to visit Elon University in North Carolina or Lynn University in Florida. My name is Cyndy McDonald. I'm the host of the Friday Forums. These started during COVID, and they've just been going strong ever since. I'm an educator, an entrepreneur, and I have a passion for education and bringing subject matter experts to you that talk about topics that you care about. So welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here. I'm glad to have Carmen, my right-hand person. She helps us with the Friday forums, and she will be monitoring your chat and the questions. We have this conversation today, don't be hesitant to put in questions in the Q&A, and we'll be covering those at the end. So as everyone's coming in, I want to introduce Greg Zaiser and Stefano Papaleo. Greg is the Vice President for Enrollment at Elon University, and Stefano is the Director of Admissions at Lynn University. So I want to welcome both of you to my Friday Forums.
Thank you, Cyndy.
I have the very great privilege of being on the campus of Elon University not too long ago, and was just blown away by the opportunities and things that it offers. And I've been to Lynn University, not recently, but a number of times. And I've always felt like Lynn always had such a responsiveness to students. And that's the same kind of thing that I felt when I visited Elon as well. And in talking to Greg and to Stefano, realized that both universities are very responsive to students and their needs. And this especially was important during COVID. So I wanted to have you both come and talk about that. Institutions of higher education are not normally known for being very agile or responsive to current conditions. My husband used to work at our local community college, and I know how long it takes to get things to change there. I work as an instructor at University of California, UCLA, and the College Counseling Certificate Program. I know how long it takes to get things done there too. And so I think it's very remarkable that both your institutions were able to really respond and take situations and respond well to them. And this was based on things you'd already done. So as we're coming in to talk about this, I'd love for you each to talk about your journey in higher education and what has contributed most to your learning. So Greg, let's start with you. What has your journey been like?
Sure. Thanks, Cyndy. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My journey has been, I'm an Elon grad, so I have been at Elon for a very long time. And so my career has been in higher education. It has not exclusively been in enrollment. I worked in the advancement area for a time with the alumni office. But ultimately, I've held, as you can imagine, over a lot of years, a number of different positions at the university. So it's been really valuable for me to have had different lenses on the university. I sit on the university senior staff and report directly to the president. So I will say this from the very beginning, I do think that has been helpful for me in order to talk a little bit about how we navigated COVID, or how we continue to navigate COVID, because of being literally meeting daily for months on end. Even on the weekends too, just to make sure that we could foster communication. So my experience has been all at Elon up to this point, but in a number of different capacities that I think has been tremendously valuable for me. And my first love, of course, like it is for just about every admission officer, whether you're a director or an admissions counselor, is working with students. So I still love that opportunity to do that and try to do that as much as possible. So
thank you. That makes such a difference to have that background that you have, because you've been there and done that, and you understand from all different levels what it takes and what it means, and that has quite an impact. Stefano, what about you? I know you have quite a story too.
Well, not far off from Greg's experience. I'm also a Lynn graduate. It's my 28th year at Lynn. Started as a tennis recruit from Rome, Italy, and I came to this place that this is before cell phones, before internet, before anything. So traveling 5,000 miles away, my English was okay. It wasn't the best. And I thought I was going to do a 1-year exchange, for me. I was going to university back home in Italy, and I thought I was going to come here for 1 year and just do a little bit of an experience, better my English and play some tennis and just go back home and finish my degree in Rome. And little did I know that I would find not only a university, but really a home, really a family here at Lynn. And it's been an incredible experience, from a personal standpoint, in terms of my experience as a student, as an athlete, and very, very involved at the university, which then turned into a profession. I didn't think this is what that was the direction that I was going to be headed towards, but I think most educators, they find that calling along the way, right? And Greg and I actually met about 25 years ago, more or less, in Rome during a recruitment trip, and I was in between my undergraduate and grad. I was in Rome for a period of time, and he came representing Elon at the institution that I was working at that time. I think it was back in '96 or '97, and that's where we met the first time. And it's been a great relationship, friendship, professional relationship that we've held. But I think that my connection and our connection with our own institutions is very, very special, right? And something that might not be very common in higher education, and something that I think connects us very well in in so many different ways.
Absolutely. I love that you have that background, and that you came as an international student and then ended up staying. So you have that perspective that you can bring to the table as well, and help not only you can understand the students that are coming from that experience, but help others understand what that might look like and what that feels like. So what does the current research say about how students learn best? We sometimes we talk about it, but we don't always know what that means.
I can start if you want, Greg. So we've done a lot of we try to keep up with what's going on out there, right, as much as we possibly can as an institution. And something that we did about now 11 years ago is that we sat down with people from Apple, and we try to figure out what is this new generation doing? How are they learning? How should we change our delivery system in order for us to keep up with how this brains are wired, right? Because that's a lot of us, when I talk about the academia in general or higher education. Some university, as you mentioned, Cyndy, are very slow at adapting to change. And a lot of professors still teach the same way that they taught many years ago, 20, 30, 50 years ago. And that's not how this generation learns best. And all the research that we kept reading took us to the same ending point, to the same area, where it shows the students are a lot more, we learn by mostly memorizing and regurgitating and answering, test questions. So this generation learns by doing, learns by interacting, learns by working in teams. So we have made it a goal and it's very specific in our strategy plan to really modify the way that we deliver the pedagogy here at the university and the instruction in terms of how this new generation really learns. So we started designing and curating our own books, our own iBooks that we give the students that are very different than what we were used to, right? Those are almost living documents that the students can interact with. They have videos that pop up. They have pictures. They have multiple choice testing. They have, the books can be read to them. They actually interact with the material that they're working with. And we've seen a tremendous level of excitement, from the students when they get to work with ways that they actually, where it connects with the way that they learn so much better.
It does. And I think that's such an important thing to talk about is the way our brains are wired, and especially our youth. It is different. The way they learn is different. So, Greg, what about from your perspective? What kind of research and things do you guys have?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think, if you ask 4 different people how they learn, and 4 different people will tell you a different way. So, we obviously know there are visual learners, there are auditory learners, there are people who learn by reading and memorization, and then there are people who are just sort of hands-on. And I think, we all know that the more you can apply something, the more you're able to retain it. So years ago, and those who are familiar with Elon and Lynn know that we've leaned into these practices that are we use the term engaged learning. We also ask all the time, do 18-year-olds really know what engaged learning is? So we're constantly sort of, trying to hone the messaging, but that just means learning by doing, experiential learning, and leaning into high impact practices that we know the research bears that will tell us that students graduate with a skill set that is fundamental to continued learning. We talk a lot about lifelong learning in a college environment, but what we're really trying to do is develop students to develop a love of learning so that they're constantly inquiring and wondering and theorizing and just sort of, asking questions and learning, continuing to learn. So the high impact practices, I'm sure our audience knows what they are, but obviously they are things that are part and parcel of many college institutions now or universities: global study, internships, service learning, undergraduate research, learning communities, experiences that really are very tangible in nature. And I think that one of the things that Elon has done because of the research on high impact practices is we've sort of embedded them into the curriculum. So students have to do 2 of those 5 in order to graduate, or 2 of the 5 that are the most predominant. And by doing that, I think you're graduating students who have a skill set that we hear from employers all the time, in graduate school, admissions committees that are distinctive among others. So, I think fundamentally it's leaning into learning by doing, because we all can retain things. Most of us, regardless of the way we learn, have a better chance of retaining once we've had to apply something that we've studied.
Right. That's very true. And, and at all levels of education, my background and experience is working with high school down to elementary, and that hands-on tactile experience has so much more impact, and you can teach more in a shorter period of time through that kind of a model. So that's one of the things we did in AVID by teaching students how to take notes and keep a binder and just those kinds of tactile things. So how did COVID impact how your students learn, with these learning models and these learning approaches, especially if you're hands-on, in person? How do you do that virtually? So what was what impacts did COVID have when, you said, Greg, you were meeting like daily? So
yeah, sure. I'll just jump in real quickly here. One of the things that became very clear, first of all, we all remember March of 2020, right? And so that was a period of time at spring break. Most colleges and universities, certainly in the US, went virtual. We went on spring break, and during that period of time, it became evident that students weren't coming back for the rest of the semester because of all the unknowns. And if if you wonder how much we've learned in a few years, think back to how much we didn't know in, just 2 years ago now, just a little more than 2 years ago now. And there is some reality that we've come a long way. But that was the only period of time that Elon was closed, meaning virtual, not closed. I was actually in the office every day, had the whole building to myself. It was odd, but the campus was quite quiet. The senior administration was meeting regularly, as I said, daily, virtually, of course, but strategizing, planning, learning as we went, right? And I think fundamentally, what we decided was Elon hangs its hat on engaged experiential learning, in-person learning. So we had to stay true to that in order for us to make good on the promise of the kind of education that we promoted to students and we believe is what serves students best. So we were only virtual for that period of time. Now, we came back in the fall of 2021, fully masked, of course, and physically distant. But we also, created outdoor classroom spaces, which students loved and faculty loved. And now we have outdoor classrooms. We don't have the tents up anymore, but, one of those small things that you learned that you didn't have before, and it was a takeaway from the pandemic of that time. So, that's how we really worked to continuing to deliver on the mission of the university, was by coming back. It was not easy. There were a lot of folks who had differing opinions on whether or not we should be back. But I think that's when you understand leadership and commitment to the mission of an institution. And so we were, and the other thing I'll just say too, not every school could do it because they're in a different setting or they're much larger. Very different. Elon is a dynamic place. We have 7,000 students and 6,300 undergraduates. So because of the physical space and the size of the enrollment, we were able to do that. Doesn't mean that if you weren't able to do that, you weren't staying true to your mission. It was just a matter of the circumstances. But we just felt like it was just critically important and we were going to have to figure out how we could do it. And fortunately, we were able to do it given the resources that we had to bear.
And so you came back, they came back when? In the spring?
August of 2020. So we were in person all of the 2020-21 academic year, and then of course all of last year, and then this year. So yeah.
What about for you, Stefano? I know Lynn University, you and I had a conversation, and even the scheduling changed. Now I found that very interesting.
Yeah, similar to what Greg said, we learned a lot, and we are the type of institution that is not afraid to experiment. We have the culture of, we care so much about this place that we'll do whatever it takes to make sure it, we delivered on our promise. And just like Greg said, that's what we are trying to do. We're trying to be the best place for those students that are coming in that are very, very different from the students that came a generation ago. So how do we work with them and make sure that we that we continue delivering on our promise? So from March through May, when we closed, for us, actually, we were in a way lucky because having been an Apple Distinguished School for almost 10 years at that time, the entire curriculum, the entire delivery system was on an iPad. So whether you do it in class or you do it at home, the difference is very, very minimal, right? In terms of the experience that you can have connecting with your professor, right? So we were lucky. So that was just a switch that we turned, and the students went virtual, but they were already used to going virtual because of the way that we deliver the system, right? So that was great, but that wasn't enough for us, right? We're like, okay, this is not necessarily what we had promised the students. So how can we come back in a safe environment that will allow the students to still meet and continue having that, project-based type learning that they had been doing pre-COVID. So the biggest thing, and when you have people that are so dedicated and are willing to make huge changes to really make sure that the university stays current and in a way survives, because something like that. And we know that several institutions have closed because they have not been able to deal with that, right? They weren't flexible enough to understand that unless you change what you're doing at a fundamental level, you could potentially not reopen, right? Because of the financial stress that the COVID gave to a lot of the institutions. So what we did is that we said, okay, what is the best way for our students to be successful, to be safe, and for us, because we also didn't know what was going to happen, right? Because the unexpected consequences of what COVID was going to bring, nobody knew. Nobody knew if we had to close again after reopening in August. Nobody knew what in the world was going to, this pandemic was going to bring to us. So over the summer, our faculty got together. We got in touch with Colorado College, and we're like, how do you folks work on a block schedule? We felt that maybe, transforming our 16-week schedule into a four-week blocks schedule was going to be the best way to do it. So what happened is that's what we did. So we divided the 16 weeks into 4 blocks, and we basically squeezed 5 courses that you usually do during the semester into the 4 blocks. So students were taking 1 course at a time each month, basically, right? It's a little bit more complicated than that, but just to make it easy for the sake of our conversation. So that allowed for the students to only go to 1 class every month. So we could actually track the students. We could actually, in case anyone got sick, we could trace it back to that specific class and make sure that we could intervene. And in case we needed to close, the students would have to travel with 1 class instead of having to travel with 5 classes, right? And going back to their homes. What we didn't realize, it was what I call the unintended consequence of the block schedule, is that it works so well, so incredibly well, that the data was telling us that the students were happier, they were doing better in class in terms of grades, they were never missing a class, and the engagement in class was very, very, very different than we had experienced before, because students were going to class for 1 basically course a month for 2.5 hours every day, meeting with the same people, meeting with the same professors 2.5 hours every day. So the type of engagement that we saw was far superior to what was happening before, where they met for 45, 50 minutes 3 times a week, right? And it was a much more different type of environment. So now we've become a block schedule university, right? Because of COVID. So we have to thank COVID for having given us the ability to test something that probably we would never have thought about had it been for COVID. But it's only because we have the professors came all in on it, right? And they were ready to say, hey, whatever we need to do, right? Whatever we feel is best for the institution, we're all in, right? And this has been transformational for us, throughout the years. This is just one example, but this has happened over and over and over at Lynn. And I think it goes back to the culture, right? It's the culture of the institution that defines how quickly you can do those kinds of things, how much people can really feel connected with the institution, whether you're a student, whether you're a faculty member, whether you're just a janitor here on campus, right? It's that culture of the institution that makes a difference. And I feel that Lynn and Elon are very similar in this, right? Very, very similar in the types of institution that we are. Greg, I don't know if you know this, but George Keller, who did the big strategic plan for Lynn University, he also did our strategic plan for Lynn University before he passed. So Lynn was the last institution. George Keller is a very, very famous educator. It was in his 80s when he worked on a strategic plan at Lynn University. But I think we have this common thing that I think it makes us very, very similar and very, very united.
For sure. Yep. Yeah. I would imagine maybe some listening today have read the book, which is called Transforming a College. It's a case study on Elon University. To Stefano's point, it was really the transformation phase in the 80s into the 90s, written by the late George Keller. So yeah, I did not realize that, Stefano, but I'm not surprised, given what you and I know about each other's institutions.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put Carmen will look it up and she'll put a link to that. I was not aware of that book, but it points back to both of you've talked about, the promise to students, as a counselor and as an advisor, sometimes that's hard for me to A, for me to find out, and B, for me to have my students find out. So what are ways that you communicate that promise to students? And what questions should we be asking to find that out?
You want to go, Greg? You want to go? What? Okay.
Go ahead. Take it
Thank
away.
you. Is being very chivalrous. I think that we do it on. So I think the thing that happens at Lynn is still not a name brand institution, right? When we talk about, if you go to a high school, we know that there's those 50 institutions that everybody knows, that everybody always mentions, that everybody wants to go to. We're not that institution. So, the only way that we're going to let a student understand who we are and what we do is by really developing a relationship or developing, over time. And I think that if anyone gives us the opportunity to tell our story, they'll be very impressed at what they hear, right? Because there's very few institutions, I believe, that I know of, with my quarter century experience of listening to, and traveling with other institutions that truly, I think, have the ability and have the true will to do something that is different, to do something that adds up to something else. And I'll tell you, one of the stories that I hear all the time when people come and visit, just because maybe their independent counselors has told them to visit, or their high school counselors have told them to visit Lynn, but Lynn was not on their list whatsoever, right? It wasn't even on their radar. And then they come and visit and they tell you, oh yeah, I'm here just because, Mrs. Brown told me to come and visit. And then once they come back and once they complete, that the campus visit experience that we have, they're like, I had no idea. I am so impressed with the kinds of things that you're doing. And why isn't everybody in higher education doing the same things that you're doing? So those are the kinds of things that we get to hear, that we get to do. So for us to really give that that promise is by developing that relationship with the student and letting the students understand how we're different from other institutions and the kinds of things that we do to make sure that they understand what we feel is important for the students.
I love that. I've interviewed Corey C. Miller as well. She's the author of Generation Z, and she was seeing students come onto our campus and realizing that the things that the college used to do weren't working anymore. The students weren't reacting the same way. And that's when she started doing some research to figure out, well, how is this generation different from others? And being able to listen and look at that and respond to that, I think is so key. What about from your perspective, Greg?
Yeah, I just want to say that your quarter century experience, Stefano, at Lynn sounds a lot longer than my 32-year experience at Elon. So thank you for couching it that way. I appreciate that very much. I think that what you're hearing is that there are a fair amount of similarities in our values, and relationships matter, and connections matter, and keeping students informed matter. I was thinking as Stefano was speaking, very similar responses. I would say that as I reflect on those 2 years, it's ongoing, but certainly that period of time, when I think about how we tried to communicate, I think all of us had dashboards, right? So we were monitoring everything in real time. We also took to Facebook Live. I know no student is watching Facebook Live, but we posted it to Instagram Live. And so we were doing we literally transformed a space in our building, the Admissions Welcome Center here, that became a studio. And we were literally putting out interviews, Facebook Live, 15-minute sessions on different topics that were both academic in nature, but sort of where we were in the scheme of things. And we would I would interview the president a couple of times a year. And we would have students talking about their experience amidst COVID. So we were trying to communicate what it's like to be a student at Elon during the pandemic and how that experience was impacted. But also just, overall trying to make sure that, people understood that in spite of what was going on, the most important thing continued to be the focus on students and the relationships students have with their professors, with staff, with one another, with the alumni, and just fostering that kind of information, I think, was really important.
And it really demonstrated that you can have those relationships. They transcend just the person to person. Of course, the person is the ideal, but even in our industry, and I'm conducting a survey right now, and it's interesting because people are saying one of the biggest changes from COVID, and this was in my case too, is I went all virtual. I don't have to meet with students one-on-one to have an impact in their lives and in what their choices and the direction and the guidance that I give them. So I think, so do you feel like because of that experience, it expanded the toolbox that the universities have to help students from experience their education? Are there things that, Stefano, you've already mentioned the block schedule. So is that going to stay? Are you guys going to go back to the old schedule? What's going to stay and what's going to go away?
I don't see how we could go back to a system that didn't work as well for us. I don't know that it's the right system for every institution, but the idea is to monitor 4 years of data. Now we're finishing up our third year, and then next year we're going to have 4 years of data, and then we're going to reevaluate, right? But I guess that's how you do it. But when I talk to students, when I yet have to talk to a parent or an educator that doesn't think that this is a great way of delivering the educational system. So I wasn't the biggest proponent of it because it's so different from anything else that is being done out there. So I thought that I was going to be met with a lot of scrutiny, with a lot of questions about, why would you do that? Who are you? Little Lynn University, you think you can change the way that education is being delivered? But I take out the data and I show them that the students are doing better. That we ask the students, right? We get the students involved in the decision-making process, and I think it was close to 85% of them that voted to keep the new system, the block schedule, after the first year. So, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself.
That's incredible. That really is. What about for Greg? What are you guys going to keep?
Yeah, well, I have often said since those 2 years that we often don't change things until we have to change them, and for a lot of years we had talked about, we had considered going test optional for a lot of years, and there was always a reason not to do it. And frankly, we were not offering virtual experiences the way all of a sudden we were all doing virtual experiences, and we were doing, I'm sure like Lynn, virtual everything. And so those things, we're still offering virtual visits, which I think is critically important because not everyone can visit. And, you sort of knew that, but we all remember too, when Zoom was sort of a new thing, right? And like, oh, I'm going to have a video conference. And now it's, of course, I'm not going to talk to you on the phone. I want to log on via Zoom and talk to you, kind of thing. So obviously those virtual experiences extend our opportunity to communicate and for students to access us, whether it's, a virtual visit, which we all know is never going to be as strong as an in-person experience, but it creates opportunity, which is really the most important thing. So I think that's a big takeaway from it. You know, we've sort of scaled some things back. We're not doing the Facebook Lives anymore, but and attendance has fallen off as people are able to visit or reach out in other ways, and we're back out on the road. But the other thing I'll just say real quickly is we did, as most colleges and universities did who were not test optional, go test optional. We began a 3-year pilot, and you know, I'm grateful. I'm just going to say this. I'm grateful for the pandemic because that is a takeaway that benefits students in the long run. You know, we all know the research on standardized tests, and there are all sorts of reasons why you can justify maintaining the requirement for a standardized test. But again, until you have to change, you sometimes don't. And even Elon is a pretty nimble place, but we went test optional and we're not going back. And we're not going back to requiring the standardized test requirement. It was a 3-year pilot that I mean, the research is, you know, being done, is nearly complete, but we're not going back because ultimately, I don't think that benefits students. And we're in the business of working with students and for students. So.
Well, that answers Karen's question. Is Elon staying test optional permanently?
Yes, Karen.
And I think that is one of the things, and it points back to our, you know, just looking at experiential learning and having that involvement in looking at student learning from their point of view and what a difference that makes. And I know here in California, you know, it was such an issue because we couldn't test. I mean, my students were flying to Oregon and Nevada and, you know, other places just to take these tests and literally putting their, you know, their health at risk to just go take these tests. So I just applaud that. And it's another part of demonstrating being responsive to needs. So we're Carmen, I know you have some questions. I'm seeing some questions. So let's let you pose those.
Yes. So there are 2 questions that kind of have to do with the political climate of Florida. So I have put these schools on lists, but I just can't convince kids because of the location. Either they're too remote or too Florida. How can we address our students' fears on these counts? Will female students be able to get reproductive health care? I know this is a big concern. And then a secondary question kind of piggybacking on that was, has Lynn seen any drop in application response to Florida's political climate?
Yeah, it's to Florida. That's a very interesting way to put it, but I do agree with you. It's something that it's you know, front and center right now. You know, the thing about Florida is that you know, it's one of those places that you know, this too shall pass, as we say, right? Hopefully it'll get more balanced. Right now, it's obviously, you know, we're going into a political you know, close to a presidential election, and we know that the governor of Florida is making a lot of stunts, right, to really be up there, to be seen, and a lot of the things that we're doing, I'm pretty sure they're very connected to the fact that he's hoping to run for the presidential race. You know, the good thing is also that you know, Florida is a big state. There is many different areas in Florida. We happen to be in an area that is very well. It's 50-50, if you will, right? Palm Beach County, Broward County, Miami-Dade. We're in an area that it's different, right, from the rest of Florida. It's where you find a lot more balance. So I think the experience is still very, very. You know, yes, you can read about it, but we don't really feel it where we are, thankfully. We're also an independent institution, right? We're private, so we make our own rules. We don't have to bend books. We don't have to do those things that you hear about. So we still are the most international university in the state of Florida, and one of the top 10, top 15 most international in the country. We're one of the most diverse institutions in the country in terms of so. You know, Lynn is a different type of place, right? That continues to stay very, very balanced, and so we're just waiting for this fire to kind of go down a little bit because the impact that it has on the student really hasn't changed from when the governor started doing all those things. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I mean, the other questions were, did we see a drop in applications? We've been on a record breaking streak for the last 12 years. And we've gone from 2,500 applications about 5 years ago to 10,000 applications this year. So yeah, no, I think what we're doing speaks loudly than the what's around us. I think that the core of what we're doing is what really impressing, I think, a lot of the families that are hearing about Lynn and about how Lynn has grown in the last couple of years. I think we've done a major shift. I always like to tell families that we've gone from our teenage years to our adulthood. So I feel that we've matured a lot as an institution. Now we enroll about 3,500 students. When I was a student here, we had 1,000 students. So it's a very different place. And it's a place that is doing really, really great things. And when families come to visit and come to touch it and feel it, they come out with a great reassurance. It's a safe place. It's a multicultural place. It's a place where all voices are heard. So we love it here.
That's important. Greg, what about your perspective? I mean, you're in North Carolina, it has a different kind of climate, but I'm sure there's still some of those concerns as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, states that are historically red or perceived as red, will, by and large, be on the end of people wondering what it's like there. And to Stefano's point, as a private institution that, frankly, has diversity, equity, inclusion embedded in our strategic plan and who we are, we have an advancing equity requirement in the curriculum. So this is a place that really is different than the environment in which by which we are surrounded. Now, that's not to say that, first of all, North Carolina is sort of, in between, if you will, and is not as conservative as it once was, but certainly the hotbed of colleges and universities, both public and private. So Elon's position is, I think, pretty balanced, really. And I've been here a long time, so I would say to you, it's more balanced than I would say it has historically been. And I think there's great value in that. So what I would hope, and for our counselors who are listening and watching, I get it because you're working with families who are saying, I'm not interested in the South. The politics, everything we're hearing is just not compatible, perhaps, with our values. And I hope that you will, as I know you try, to encourage them to really consider the fact that they're looking at universities where students are coming from all over the country and all over the world who are bringing different perspectives and values that aren't necessarily reflective of where they are located. So yeah, I would say very similar to what Stefano said. I don't envy him being in Florida, but to his point too, these things ebb and flow, and I think that hopefully the tide will turn sooner than later.
Well, and that points to the importance of being able to visit, whether it's virtual or in person, and understanding, going back to that mission and the promise that each university has. And that promise can be much more compelling. Sometimes my students or we as educators will be able to say, here's the compelling thing. Here's all the things that you would get. And you learn real life experiences dealing with some of the other, things. But as Karen says, concern about reproductive care is legitimate. And we are in a very historic time. And, and in many ways, we don't know what that all is going to look like. And, and especially, and, all the things going on for transgender, LGBTQ plus in general, that's, but, we want to focus on the aspects of experiential learning and that aspect. So one other question, Carmen, I know I see in there is about connecting students to internships. So go ahead.
So we have a question from Lisa. I'd like to hear how much support colleges have for students in getting connected with experiential learning like internships. It seems like every college talks about engagement, internships, etc., but it requires a student to expend a lot of executive function to actually find the opportunities. Can you speak to this?
So this happens at Lynn from the minute that the students actually step foot on campus for their, we really try and direct, and we feel that the professional career has to go hand in hand and very parallel with the academic. It's not an afterthought. It's not something that happens, in senior year. This is something that students have to start working on from day one. So it's very, very important to us, and it happens at so many different levels at Lynn, and I know it happens similarly at Elon. A couple of examples. So we hire faculty that have field experience. So we care about the academic preparedness and the PhD that they have, but very rarely would we hire a faculty that doesn't have experience in the field that they teach in, because we feel it's extremely important. All the research points back to the fact that 3 of the main areas are creating a connection with a mentor, having the experience that it's hands-on experience, and then having the network, right? Those are the 3 areas that lead to a successful post-college experience, whether it's in the workforce or in graduate school. So we really hone on those areas. The courses are not taught by giving students a midterm and a final. We evaluate the students in many different ways, and there's a lot of projects, there's a lot of simulations, there's a lot of real life opportunities that come in and are embedded into the classroom work, right? We don't want the students, if they're studying marketing, we don't want them to understand what a marketing is and answer multiple choice questions. It's to actually experience what that really means in real life, right? So we'll have someone that'll come in and we'll work with them and create an actual project for them that they can work on, so they can understand the concept, not by just reading and answering the question, but actually doing it, right? So that's the project-based learning that we talked about. Something else that we're doing, there's so many opportunities for students to also demonstrate that the learning doesn't just happen in class, but also outside of class, through internships, through conferences, through presentations, through competitions, anything that they do, we actually keep tabs at Lynn. So we have this system that works behind the system that they're actually embedded in. That it's called the co-curricular transcript, right? So we record everything that the students do outside of class, right? And when the students are ready to go to grad school or ready to apply for an internship or a job, we print not only the transcript, but the co-curricular transcript that brings up everything that they have done, from the job that they had on campus to the ability to show leadership opportunities, which also leads to badges that they can get in different areas that are important to employers. So that's something that happens. The students that don't even realize that they're actually building something for their future by joining a club, an organization, or going to a presentation or going to a conference. But we know how important that is. So we record everything. And once they're finished, they have this document that shows everything that they have done since they've walked at Lynn.
Wow. Greg, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have something similar. It's called the Elon Experiences transcript. And I think to Stefano's point, that transcript itself is probably as important, if not perhaps more important than the academic transcript, because it speaks to the experiences that a student has had that has helped develop them in terms of competency in so many different areas. Elise, I'm glad you asked this question because one of the things that, Elon, I mentioned earlier, 2 of the Elon experiences, which are high impact practices, are required. But the other question that we often ask ourselves is, okay, we talk about these and we have a goal and 86% study abroad and 88% do an internship. But what about that 14% or that 12% that don't? Why not? And one of the questions we are asking is, okay, so not every student comes in understanding how to access these things. A lot of times it's organic, but how do we make this a little bit more systematic so that we can get closer to 100% so that all students are having the same kind of experience? So, obviously in each of the professional schools at the university, internships are required. So we work on a hub and spoke model so that the Student Professional Development Center, which we all know as the Career Center, has an office, an extension in each of the professional schools, so that when the student is planning for their next year, whether they're going to be a sophomore or a junior or even a senior, they're working not just with their academic advisor, but the advisor in the satellite office for the Student Professional Development Center. And that person's responsibility is to provide contacts and connections for students to seek out the internship. So trying to be intentional about, we're not going to say, come and do this, good luck, but also making sure that students know how to access those things, that not just that the resources are there, but how do we make sure that the students are aware of those resources and foster that connection.
Yeah. Cyndy, we've gone even to the point of actually creating a course that is required for every student. It's a career course that every student has to take in order to graduate, where we go over every single step. Just like Greg was saying, letting the students understand what services are available to them, right? In order for them, yes, internships are required, right? But there's still students that fall within the cracks, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's something else that that I think as universities that are a bit smaller than maybe some of the larger institutions, we're able to kind of do almost on a personalized basis, right? All students, we make sure that the students do connect with the career service from year one, and really build that that understanding of what it takes to be successful.
Well, and I think that the universities too, by having that's part of both of your core curriculum. And that's one thing we can look for as advisors, is looking at that core curriculum and how that encourages those internships and that involvement, and then making it possible. If you're, no matter what your major is, so often we hear as counselors, oh, they can't do that because they're in engineering, or they can't do that because they're pre-med. So they making it possible for all students to be able to do that is key. I know even the schedule, like a block schedule or a 4-4-1 or a 4-1-4, those kinds of things facilitate that very well. So we've just got a couple of more minutes. And Amy has a question about advisors. So do the academic advisors, are they part of this? I've never heard of hub and spoke. I think that's a phenomenal concept. Are they the ones that people go to in addition to the Career Center? What role and I'm assuming, Amy, that's what you're talking about, is the academic advisors.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quickly here and give you my personal experience with this, because, when you work at a university, as long as I have, as long as Stefano has, we know a lot about the institution. Then I became a parent of an Elon student. My son graduated from Elon in 2020. And it was amazing to me the things I learned about my alma mater through my son's experience. And he had a great experience. But there's a class at Elon called, similar to what Stefano is describing at Lynn. This class is called Elon 1010 or Elon 101, and it's a first semester course, so not at the end of the college experience, but at the beginning, that all students take. And in it, students have to write a 4-year plan. So now we all know no plan is linear. And I have to tell you, though, having talked about this for as many years as I did, and then actually finding Noah Zaiser's 4-year plan. Of course, he didn't share it with me. I just found it. And I was so impressed by it, because as a parent, I wanted to know that he was thinking about and somebody was helping him think through the experiences that he was hoping to get out of his Elon experience. So that is one way I think students are introduced to this idea of they come knowing that these experiences are part and parcel of an Elon education. But then the faculty advisor for the students in their first semester has them go through this exercise of, okay, let's talk about the next 4 years. What do you hope to get out of it? When do you hope to do it? You know, and even if they're unsure about a major, there's still a lot of the programs and opportunities are regardless of the specific major. So I think that's one way that Elon really engages students quickly and from the very beginning in that first semester. Obviously, it's also part of the registration process before students arrive, but I think once they're here and they're in a group, and by the way, that class is no more than 20 students, much like most of our classes, there's that really thoughtful, intentional, okay, let's think about this. Let me help you think through what the next 4 years will look like. And it was great. It was really very satisfying as a parent.
Amazing what we experience as parents as versus just the profession. Yeah, that's very true. Well, we are out of time, and I still see we've got great questions coming in. So if somebody has questions that they want to address to either or both of you, what would be the best way to do that?
Anyway, call us, smoke signals, email, whatever works best for you. I think it's obvious that we have a passion for this, and we're going to be at the HECA conference presenting, the three of us together. So come and say hi. And let's have coffee together. Whatever works. Just reach out. I would like to extend the session by another hour if you want. No, I'm not. I'm just joking. But the time has flown so quickly. I can't believe it.
That is
I
true.
completely agree. Feel free to email me. I'm happy to talk by phone or in person at any point in time. Zoom, because remember I said we don't have any phone conversations anymore. Happy to Zoom to connect that way. More than happy to. We're in this together, folks. I truly believe that.
And that's what makes the difference. And that is the key. We're all here, going back to your original comment, is, we're all here to serve students and work with students in all those different capacities. So Carmen has put emails in the chat so that you do have Greg and Stefano's email. I'll also put them in the show notes so that you have those there. You'll be getting those in the next day or two. I'll get this transcribed as soon as possible. And as mentioned, we're going to be doing this at the HECA conference, which will be in Washington, D.C. in June. So we're going to be talking about experiential learning. So if there's particular things that you want highlighted or questions you might have, feel free to send those to me as well. Greg and Stefano, thank you so much for taking your time out on this Friday to join me on my Friday forum. And Carmen, thank you for helping to facilitate. Everyone, if you haven't done my survey yet, if you're an IAC, I'm doing a survey on IAC practices. It's in an area that I don't think anybody else has really asked about in terms of our business practices. So Carmen's put the link to the survey. I would really appreciate it. My goal is to get to 500. I'm almost at 300, so I'm halfway there. And Katie Anderson and I will be doing a session on this as well at the HECA conference and at the IECA conference coming up in Seattle in May. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Greg and Stefano, again. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend and holiday, and join me. I won't be back until the end of April. So we'll be meeting with Daniel Coven and Jay Clark, and we're going to talk about valuing your business. So we're going to have a business-oriented Friday forum, but it'll be the end of April. So everyone, thank you for being with me today.
Thanks, Cyndy. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Cyndy. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.